It all started with a simple concept: survive 5 nights in a haunted pizzeria while being hunted by possessed animatronics. Well, the first game dropped back in 2014, and since then we've been treated to numerous sequels, each one more intense in both the gameplay and the lore than the last. From the original 2D point-and-click game, to the virtual reality amalgamation of Help Wanted, to the first-person free-roaming storytelling game that is Security Breach, Five Nights at Freddy's has evolved into a complex web of storytelling and gameplay. Especially in recent years, with the addition of the Steel Wool game development company to the franchise. They helped evolve the games from 2D survival games into 3D storytelling games with much more interesting and intriguing gameplay, as well as just being bigger games as a whole. Now let's talk about the topic of this video, which is also the most recent Five Nights at Freddy's game, Into the Pit. The plot of the game closely follows the story from the Fazbear Frights book series, specifically the first story, where a young boy named Oswald stumbles across a mysterious ball pit in a run-down pizza place that goes by the name of Jeff's Pizza. Now, this ball pit in particular acts as a time machine, transporting Oswald back a few years to when the restaurant went by Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. What started as a quick trip down memory lane turned into a nightmare as Oswald encounters Spring Bonnie, who is an evil animatronic that is chasing him and trying to kill him. The game divides this narrative into various gameplay segments, though calling it gameplay is a bit generous. Essentially, all you're doing is guiding Oswald through different locations, interacting with objects that just end up triggering jumps in the story. The only part of this game that I would call gameplay is the moments where you hide from Spring Bonnie and complete quick time events to not die. If anything, it's more like playing a visual novel with the occasional jump scare thrown in there to remind you that you are in fact playing a Five Nights at Freddy's game. Now, before we go any further, I do have to warn you, if you're one of the 5 real people in the world that have enjoyed this game, you might want to click off of the video. I have absolutely nothing good to say. If you tied me up and started waterboarding me, I think I would die before I had something good to say about this game. But it does exist. So, I mean, let's go. I have a ton of reasons why I didn't like this game, but I'll do my best to put it together in a cohesive and critical way rather than just saying, oh, I didn't like this game. So let's go. Let's start with the biggest issue, which is replayability. Usually, Five Nights at Freddy's games have you coming back for more. Whether if it's to get a different ending, to catch an Easter egg, or just to replay it just because the gameplay is fun. Definitely a very large part of many Five Nights at Freddy's games is replayability. But Into the Pit, once you've played through its linear story, that's it. It's like trying to reread a book. Sure, if you liked it a lot, you can reread it again. There's no law in the world that tells you cannot reread books. But there is literally no gameplay. There is no gameplay. The most gameplay you're gonna get is being chased, where this stupid fat little kid just falls over a whole bunch. That's the most gameplay you're gonna get. The entire premise of this game is reading dialogue like you're reading the book, and just going to different locations to complete mandatory dialogues. Five Nights at Freddy's has always had a heavy focus on storytelling, and I'm all for it. Alright, I made a lore video explaining all of the lore. Apparently, man, me back in 2020 was something else. But Into the Pit, as I said, just feels like reading a digital book with a few button prompts in there and quick time events to keep you awake. Another reason why I didn't like this game is because it's just irrelevant to Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole. Nothing significant happens, no important characters are even seen in this. The closest we get is a picture of William and Henry that ends up screwing over this Spring Bonnie, who honestly I don't even know who it is. I didn't even care to watch a lore explanation video on this game. Alright, if this game is actually secretly mind-blowing and it includes a part of the lore that we've been worried about this entire time, then my bad. I'm sorry I missed that. But we just follow the most irrelevant random characters in universe going about their daily lives being broke. I don't know. Having the pizzeria be Jeff's Pizza, I mean, sure, it makes it feel more realistic. I feel like if Five Nights at Freddy's actually existed in real life, the place would get taken over by some random person in 10 years. It would probably be run down like this place. But it just takes away from the feel of you playing a Five Nights at Freddy's game as a whole. We follow a kid named Oswald and his random family that has never even had an appearance in the entire franchise. Spoiler alert, it's inferred in some of the endings that both Oswald and his father die depending on whichever ending you go for. before, but I honestly don't care. I think I beat the game in around 2.5 hours, and I played on frightening difficulty. I had no time to get attached to any of these characters, and I'm sure even if I did, I wouldn't like them. Bland ass characters. If you read the Into the Pit book, then I envy you because you had a chance to play this game before it released. The story is literally word for word, detail for detail, a copy of what happens in the book. That could be wrong. For the people who have read the book, I'm sorry. I read through a couple of pages and I just instantly, like in my brain, lined it up with a frame in the game. I'm sure the fact that there's different endings and probably some that aren't canon to the game infers that it branches off from the actual occurrences of the book, but I know that for the most part, the game is a copy and paste of the book. This all kind of boils down to the fact that the game is actually not even meant to be a Five Nights at Freddy's game. In one of his interviews, Scott Cawthon reveals that this game was kind of like a gimmick and a spin-off that just ended up turning into an actual game over time. It's the first Five Nights at Freddy's game in a few years that's not made by Steel Wool, and in my opinion, Steel Wool has been spoiling us with how good these games are, so that could have something to do with it. It's made by a studio by the name of Mega Cat Studios, who doesn't really have a name. I've never heard of them, but yeah, that's why I don't like this game. I want to briefly talk about the future of Five Nights at Freddy's as well, specifically Steel Wool's latest announcement, which is Five Nights at Freddy's Secrets of the Mimic. This made me happy, okay? This came out the same day pretty much that Into the Pit was released. It was a very brief and not revealing teaser for Steel Wool's next project, which goes by the name of Secrets of the Mimic. Like I said, Steel Wool has a track record of delivering the goods with Help Wanted, Help Wanted 2, Security Breach. I trust them. I know they always pull through. I've got high hopes for Secrets of the Mimic. I mean, I wish I could go into more detail with it for you guys, but the name just surfaced like 2 days ago. The only thing that happens in the teaser is the Mimic just dancing around. So if Into the Pit left a bad taste on your mouth like it did for me, there are other ways to cleanse and brush your teeth if we're using metaphors here. As soon as I beat this game in the 2.5 hours it took me, I went and revisited some of the classics like Five Nights at Freddy's 2, Ultimate Custom Night, Pizzeria Simulator, as well as some of the spin-offs as well like Five Nights at Candy's and The Joy of Creation. Even these spin-off games I listed are what you would expect from the Five Nights at Freddy's legacy, and I didn't want to put them here for any other reason to express my love for them. So there you have it. That's Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. If you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. And if you're a fan of the game, I don't even know what to say. I'm sorry that you live life the way you do. Alright, until next time, keep your fingers on the W, A, S, and D keys ready for those quick time events, because remember, as Into the Pit taught us, those are there to remind us that we are actually playing a video game.